What's up, everybody? Sorry we're a little bit late. We're still waiting for Dan to come in from Japan. It's a special episode this week because we have the Ergo Summit that's kicked off. So there's a variety of new videos from community projects. We got a new video on scaling solutions from Alex. That's definitely worth your time. And we have a special guest with us today, Ilya from Spectrum. How are you today, Ilya?
Hello, everyone. I'm fine, thank you, Joe.
So I heard that you had a presentation to take us through before we kick off the AMA. Would you like to get into that?
Yes, I would like to make a short introduction into what Spectrum Network is and what our Catalyst proposal is about.
All right, go for it.
Well, we have an active proposal on Catalyst F9, cross-chain collaboration track. The proposal is called Spectrum Network, Layer 2 for Decentralized Finance. Spectrum is designed to solve three mandatory problems of present DeFi. Low throughput, poor capital efficiency, and expensive development. Basically, Spectrum is a sidechain network with its own computation layer that allows building natively cross-chain applications on top of it. More on our proposal and Spectrum network you can find out in the presentation, which is attached to this stream. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for taking us through that. So we've done the weekly dev update video. That's going to be released on Sunday. We've had a lot of good stuff this week, a lot of community participation. I know one of the big news was you guys rebranding. So that's pretty exciting to see. And I'm not quite sure where things are with Vassal and when you're going to actually be live on Cardano. I guess that's really not a ball that's in your court at this point.
It's more about when Cardano hard fork happens.
Yeah, and so I guess then it's just a matter of waiting on your side. We have an interesting question here that you're probably one of the developers in the space that's uniquely qualified to answer, and that is from Ilya for Blockchain Man of the Year. I think that's referring to you, not the user, but hard to say. Are there things that you can do in Plutus that you can't do in ErgoScript and vice versa? Could you kind of break down the differences from your perspective, building on Ergo, building on Cardano, what the trade-offs are, that kind of thing?
Well, basically, Plutus and ErgoScript are pretty much similar in terms of what you can and what you can't do in them. There are some small differences in what you see in the script context. In Ergo, it's more like a raw data. You can see, for example, height of the block. You can see a few headers in the context of your Ergo script validator. And for example, in Plutus validator, you don't have an access to the current height. You only have the interval of transaction validity. So script contexts are a bit different, but you can do pretty much everything. And now with Vasil hard fork, which enables read-only inputs, you can design and build similar protocols which you can build on Ergo.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Let's see, what else do we got that's been asked in here? Here's a good question from Jack Lindbergh. He said, I read the IOHK Proof of Useful Work Ophelimu research paper earlier today. Is there a possibility of Ophelimu being implemented with Ergo? Will we ever see Ergo as proof of useful work? Well, I'll answer that. Yeah, I've read the paper. It does, seem to take a step forward in terms of proof of useful work, but it's still a very raw concept. I don't think there's an actual algorithm associated with the concept yet. And the reality is, in my mind, it is a very useful and interesting idea, but it's something that needs to be battle tested, definitely, before it's ever considered going into the base layer of an existing network. Otherwise, we could potentially run into issues and rug everybody, right? And particularly, in my opinion, there are two things that really need to be battle tested and make sense and kind of designed for. The first aspect has to do with the reward mechanism, right? So you're either going to have useful work be incentivized, in which case you could ask, is that going to be via the protocol itself and the emission rate, or is that due to some external market that doesn't exist currently, right? And, if it's going to be rewarded via the protocol, you already have a blockchain with a set emission and schedule, and that creates a ton of complexity. If it's seen as being free, like we're just going to have miners subsidize usefulness, they're going to try to break it. They're going to try to create custom mining clients that optimize the traditional proof of work aspect of it and basically optimize their return. And the reality is, I think a lot of miners would take that as a hash rate lock, and they would have just an incentive to exploit it, right? And there's a lot of good miner developers out there. It's not a crew that you want to necessarily make enemies with, in my opinion, because they will try to exploit it. And, if it's possible, they'll do it. Now, the other concern is if you have an external, let's say, subsidy that's coming from a company where you create some kind of market and say, hey, we're going to do some kind of useful work for you and you need to pay us. That's a ton of complexity in terms of governance, right? So who's going to make that decision? Who's going to create that market? Who's going to make the business deals? Because, well, that sounds pretty centralizing, right? And then you also have a concern where if I create a subsidy from an external market, we've created an external dependency that influences security, right? So let's say that in theory, we had some governance mechanism in place that was actually fair. We actually ended up creating some kind of partnership with a external company that was going to pay miners for their computation. What happens if they go out of business, right? Suddenly the miners, potentially could kind of get rugged in a way due to that external, let's just say, partner. So in my opinion, it's still a really raw idea. It needs to probably come out in some sort of testnet sidechain and stand the test of time. Proof of work, one of the greatest benefits of it is it has pretty well understood and robust security assumptions, and it's been running live for over a decade. And so having that as the core aspect of security in our network is really important. I think that plugging something in just because it's a good idea without that type of rigorous testing, and I get that there's a certain, let's call it, marketing drive, where you could say, oh, we're more green, we're more useful, whatever that means. I do think to some degree it's probably a mute argument with people that are super into the let's say energy efficiency argument. They kind of generally are already invested in a proof of stake network, and they already have their beliefs around their investment. So I don't even think that's going to change much. But it is an interesting idea, right? And interesting ideas are worth exploring. They're worth kind of research, development, testing. And, hopefully at some point we do see proof of useful work develop into something that is battle hardened. But plugging that in, from day one is dangerous as hell, in my opinion. And if we're going to try to build a network with the known security assumptions and kind of reliability, that is a bad thing to do. We don't want to be the guinea pig, in my opinion. So I would say sidechain would be interesting. That would probably require some sort of collaboration with IOG. We do have a pretty good relationship there because there's a lot of overlap in terms of technology development, smart contract frameworks. So it's possible. I think that's the place to start. Now, I know that there are some people that want to be the early bird and quote unquote get the worm, so to speak. But the early worm gets eaten too. So you got to balance that. Sometimes being the first over the hill and first in line for something that is, essentially, a unknown test is not a good decision for an existing system because, we could rug everyone if we didn't do that wisely. Nope, I think I see Dan.
I see Dan. Yeah, I see him. Oh, that's me. I was thinking there's another Dan. I was thinking it was like multiplying it like an NFT or something, but no such luck.
So you got any updates for us, Dan?
Well, yes, I do. Yes, I do. So, first and foremost, the effort continues right now with the education initiative. So we're finalizing some logistical ends with the university in Bangkok, and we're going to be making an announcement around October about the curriculum. Aside from that, of course, we got our exchange listings. That is 80% there, right, Joe?
We're further
than. Well, yeah, that's like 90% there. 90% there. And Ilya can vouch for us. If something that we're just pulling your chain, Ilya can vouch for us, right? Ilya, you're in the line of fire with that, aren't you? Ilya has been really helping out with getting that sorted for us on the technical end and helping out the exchanges team to get things sorted. So we appreciate that a lot. Why is my head that much bigger than everybody else?
Just you were born that way, Dan. Don't judge.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to be like everybody else here. Okay, everybody's so nice and petite, and my head is just humongous. All right, there we go. Yeah, and so aside from that, of course, working on verticals into new exchanges, but of course that'll have to come after we're done with this one because I just don't know if we have enough capacity to do two integrations at the same time. Although we can try, but that is also being worked on right now. And so once again, I will shill upcoming conventions, guys. We need to get out there. Okay. I know you guys like to, have cool anon names and do a lot of cool stuff behind the scenes, but somebody has to show some faces. I'll be there. Joe will be there, or at least we think Joe will be there. We're still, I'm still like 85% sure he's going to be there. And then 15 is going to be just like some guy with Joe's face, like mask, like a paper, like really bad mask. Like, hi, I'm Joe. Like, I know you're not Joe. I've seen Joe's. Like, yes, I'm Joe. And anyway. So guys, again, we got several projects already joining us. Also, if you cannot join, I understand not everybody has the ability, the logistical ability, the financial ability to join us in the U.S. So what I would also like to do is start collecting intro reels for different projects, right? And something that maybe we all can work on something where so basically at these summits, we could have like a reel, right, of all the projects that we have on Ergo. Maybe have little interviews with the project creators, if you guys are so inclined, and just so we could showcase. Even if you guys can't join, we could showcase what the Ergo ecosystem has to offer. So again, please reach out to me on Telegram or any social media where you see me wandering around aimlessly and shit posting. All right. Well, I think that's it for me. So what's been going on here, Joe? I know you and Ilya have been kind of holding down the fort while everybody was looking at that beautiful photo of me.
Yeah, we did a Spectrum presentation, and we actually started to get into questions. So I'm not sure.
Excellent. Well, listen, please just go ahead. Let's get to the questions.
All right.
Let's keep going with the questions.
Looks like the next question is from Leonard Wolf. He said, question on NepoPals. How scalable is this technology in the long term? Can it be improved if blockchain transaction is increased massively over time? Will the blockchain size remain manageable? That's a good question. One thing that we're seeing in the space is the downside to having centralized dependencies, right? It messes with the censorship resistance that should exist in these networks, and when you outsource, specifically like wallets, when you outsource that type of infrastructure, it does create a point of failure or a point of censorship that was cropped up in the last week. NepoPals sounds like a really fancy word. It sounds like a cartoonish thing, like Batman punching someone or something. But the reality is, it's just a way to reduce the computational resources that are needed to have the state of the chain, right? And so, on one side, we have NepoPals, which is a compression technique. On the other side, we have storage rent and the ability to kind of manage the UTXO set over time. And I think together, that is going to do quite a bit in terms of making the blockchain size itself more manageable, more, let's just say, user-friendly across multiple devices. And hopefully in time, that will limit the exposure to kind of the outsourced builds that then, potentially are a point of censorship. And what's your take on this, Ilya? Oops, he's muted on us.
Yep, I was muted. Excuse me. So on NepoPals, I think it allows for light clients. Light clients are important for having applications communicating with blockchain in a really trustless way on light devices like smartphones, etc.
It's a good path to having solid security assumptions as well as conserving computational power.
Yeah, because currently most of the mobile wallets or mobile versions of decentralized applications, they work with servers. They receive data about blocks, about transactions from centralized servers like Explorer, etc. And NepoPals allow them to such applications to request data from P2P network directly.
Yeah, it's kind of building on the fundamental philosophy that we've heard many times: run your own node, be your own computational resource in the network. Don't kind of outsource that to dependencies, because that does not only potentially expose some information that you may not want others to see. It may put you in an environment where you may be censored. It's much better to just have the best assumptions involved. And so NepoPal is a friendly way to do that, that hopefully opens up the door to where the general user that doesn't want to sit around and sync a full node can still operate interacting with the P2P network instead of an external server.
To add to that, well, I mean, you guys got the serious end covered pretty well. So I just got to add to that, Nipopo actually reminds me of River Limpopo in South Africa. That's what I think about whenever I think of Nipopos. You know, River Limpopo?
Over my head, but
it's a well, Ilya knows because there's a Russian song about that from where I was from when I was a kid. So it's like a old people song now. I feel old now, but anyway, yeah, there's a river in South Africa, and it just reminds me of that river all the time. River Limpopo. So end of train of thought. Okay. So, we have any more questions?
Yeah, we have some more questions. Another one from Ilya for Blockchain Man of the Year. I'm not sure if that's the user or for this Ilya. I'm assuming it's for you, Ilya. You have a fan. The question is, how much uptake is there of Ergo Foundation grants being requested? Do you get many applications? Yeah, we do. We do. Now, the core thing that I want to stress to everybody is the Ergo Foundation has community money, right? It was distributed to the Ergo Foundation via mining. And so we do have a core principle involved that if you're going to apply from a grant from like a public resource, what you build needs to be a public good. And what that means is we want to see open source development. We want to see a path to open source code. That's important because not only does it help a project potentially bootstrap development, but it also gives to the entire development community, because then you get examples. And, the reality is there's a ton of money in the crypto space that usually you can go to as an alternative if you don't want to take that development route, right? Now, the Ergo community itself does a pretty good job of, open auditing and reviewing people's work when it's requested. So that community mindshare really is important. I think having open source development at this point, especially being that Ergo script is relatively new and our ecosystem is relatively young, we really need to focus on open source mindshare, lowering the barrier of entry to developers, having good documentation, getting tutorials out there, and learning from each other, because ultimately that will create a more open and resilient developer community. It's easy to kind of look at the, let's say, assumptions we can make around like mining and, distribution of hash rate. I think distribution of knowledge in the developer community is probably equally as important. Otherwise, we're just going to centralize around a few projects that potentially are closed. And then you kind of have a, walled garden that can exist in blockchains or on the development side. It's good to have that open, in my opinion. What's your take, Ilya?
On Ergo Foundation grants?
No, just on open source development.
So I guess we can see the importance of open source development by the recent events by the recent situation, present situation with decentralized exchanges, for example, on Cardano. None of those exchanges open sourced their smart contracts, and basically we can't see how protocols look under the hood, which are used in the network. So I think it's extremely important to have at least smart contracts and ideally the whole protocols published and described in public, so community can review the solutions what are used under the hood in those protocols.
That's your take, Dan?
Okay, before I give you my take, I probably should unmute myself. There we go. Well, let me tell you about open source. So 2015 me would be like, open source, are you crazy? Really? I mean, open source is for like colleges and hippies and all that. Like, what are you gonna do with open source? Like, come on. It's you pay all this money to get the software done, and you're gonna open source it, and what, you're gonna like expose all the stuff that you wrote so somebody can steal it, right? Not now. This is me in 2015, right? Now, 2015 is actually around when I started to really kind of get into the blockchain sphere, right? So kind of exploring more and more and into Bitcoin, and this is like my pre-Cardano days, of course. And so more and more I started kind of getting into it. And the first project that really kind of made me really examine like what the hell is the deal with open source was Cardano. Because one of the things that, and this is like really early, this is before Cardano launched, like about a year and a half before Cardano launched in early 2016, I was looking at the input output at that point, or what was going to be input output, which was like 6 people at that point. And one of the things that were on the website, and in fact the website was in English, in English, Japanese, and Russian. Because we had English speaking and then a lot of Russian speaking developers. And then of course we did the pre-sale in Japan. And so I had a conversation with Charles about this a while back. Actually, I think it was the first conversation I was having with him. And I just and he feels really strongly about open source. He feels that open source is the way, And so I started that conversation. He kind of gave me his take on it. And really, that started to change my mind. And of course, all these things that you guys now know, that's when these epiphanies started to hit me. Like, okay, so open source, especially in the ecosystem, in today's development, I guess, universe, right? So what does that do? Well, first of all, that as a company, if you think about it as a business, and I start to think about this as a business first, I didn't start to think about it as just kind of like the greater good side, but as a business first, it removes some liability from you because your code becomes audible, right? Or auditable. So basically, some others, third parties, can audit your code and explore, which add to transparency, right? So transparency is good. Transparency means that your business ethics are good, right? You're being transparent. You're showing what's under the hood. You're showing how these things work. You're letting other third parties scrutinize you, okay? And then that, if you can answer these questions, if you can actually cover these bases that they scrutinize, it will show you as a stronger business, a stronger project, okay? Aside from that, of course, you're potentially exposing things that you've built and you spent possibly millions of dollars on to build to the public, and like anybody can just take that code, right? But the other aspect that a lot of development relies on today is community, okay? And that's also something that people should really remember is it's not just about the code. It's about the ecosystem around what you build. And you can fork code, but you can't fork communities. And so essentially, I mean, that's really what's going to help your project evolve is the community. You putting your code out there, and yeah, maybe some people in the community will do something with it. They'll do something new with it, okay? But with that, you will, like, for example, I think what the Nautilus wallet is being forked by Comet, right?
Yeah.
Comet is going to be doing something with them. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm personally, I don't doubt that Common, they're good developers, but I just haven't had a chance to interact with them on a developer level. So I don't know. They could screw it up. They could make it great. Who knows? The bottom line is it's out there and somebody else is creating something with it. And that creates organic growth for what you have created, which in turn adds back into your ecosystem. And bottom line here is growth. You are encouraging organic growth, which is always better than artificial paid shield growth. Bottom line. This is why I am a big proponent of open source right now. As a developer myself, and as a business person, because I believe that this is actually good business. To do open source is good business.
No, we went all crazy.
Yeah, we went a little haywire.
Oh, okay.
Wait 1 second. It kind of looks like me and Joe got a one giant head. There we go.
Let's go back to the questions. What bottlenecks do you see with Ergo? How are they being rectified? I think coming into this year, we had a couple of bottlenecks, and I would say 3 of them probably. The first was the wallet side itself was pretty immature. We've seen really a lot of great development there. I would extend that to the full node wallet. I have to give Sat Ergo wallet a shout out for bootstrapping a full node build that's pretty easy to sync on in multiple environments. That's been a huge community resource in terms of hardening the network and getting more nodes out there, validating the blocks that are coming out. And I think the Explorer was probably the third. I think that was probably something that we can continue to improve, and hopefully in time, dApps themselves start hosting their own instances. And, who knows, maybe we even get to the point where, users have that ability as well if they choose to. What bottlenecks do you see in the ecosystem, Ilya?
Well, the main bottlenecks I can see actually is I don't know how to answer this question.
That honestly is the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Open source your thoughts, Ilya. Open source your thoughts to us.
I promise I won't cry on video.
I might.
Okay. So I guess our ecosystem is developing pretty organically. So I don't see any obvious bottlenecks currently.
What do you think, Dan?
Well, I wouldn't say they're bottlenecks per se, but really what I've noticed, and this is something that has gotten a lot better in our ecosystem, is individual brand identity and project organization. Okay, because just when I joined the ecosystem, things seemed a lot more scattered, right? So, I mean, the big prominent projects were ErgoDex, right? A couple other ones, but really we have so many more. There's so many more projects, and there wasn't enough visibility, because everybody just kind of was doing their own thing, and some people felt a little bit, unsure about things, and some people kind of felt like, well, I'll do it today, maybe tomorrow I won't, maybe the next day I will. And I think that was just growing pains, right? And so now what I'm seeing is, and I think that this growth that we're seeing in the ecosystem right now, it didn't just kind of like just all of a sudden everybody woke up and started doing stuff. This was, this was in the making, right? We just reached a critical mass. And I think that our bottleneck was reaching that critical mass, if you want to call it that. But I think we're past that. I think we have reached critical mass. I think we're in a place where people are finding their own identity with what they're creating. They're not afraid to put themselves out there. And I mean, it's natural. I mean, the same thing happened with Cardano. Cardano there were no projects of building on Cardano. And then there were a couple of projects, but nobody really knew about them. And then all of a sudden, there's like hundreds of projects now building on Cardano. The same thing with Ergo. It needed to reach that critical mass. It did. And so now we have, now we have Spectrum. Now we have, now we have Sea Harbor. Now we have Nautilus. Now we have, Comet doing more Comet stuff. Pardon me if I'm not including everybody that's in the ecosystem right now. It just is going to take like an hour because there's so many great projects going on right now. But it's really, really awesome to see this. It's really awesome to see that we have gone past that critical mass. And I mean, that of course, that's not all, right? We're going to have to work where there's going to be new challenges, new levels we're going to have to level up to. As the ecosystem grows, we're going to get more institutional-like projects, more larger commercial projects, which is natural. However, this right now feels great, and I think that we're definitely on the right path. We're definitely on the right path. And again, guys, if there's still people building right now that feel self-conscious about what they're building, don't. This is Ergo. We don't judge. We'll only judge you if you don't tell us. Joe will judge you if you don't do it open source, probably.
No, I mean, if someone doesn't want to build open source, I don't have a problem with that. They're their own developer. They're doing their own work. But I think it's also important to talk about the trade-offs and the potential security issues there, right? We went from like a open, permissionless, censorship-resistant environment as like the core goal of cryptocurrencies to, if it's a black box that is permissioned and potentially censored, that's more okay. And that's created huge issues for our industry, especially this year. If you look at a lot of the, let's say, protocols that, blew up, were over leveraged or, in the process of liquidation and now I guess are in court. A lot of them were just black boxes with unknown assumptions. And, it's damaging is the bottom line.
It's damaging to the whole industry, I think, because as an industry, we're still looking for legitimacy in the main, in the mainstream. And of course, it's not always about, some of those guys can go screw themselves, but then you can say that across the board. Yeah. We still need to have that certain level of credibility. And, these platforms that are, getting to, $50 billion and they're offering 400% yield and then, dumping and rugging people. That doesn't do us any good. That doesn't do projects like Ergo any good. Doesn't do anybody any good in the ecosystem and the blockchain ecosystem, because that's irresponsible. That's not sustainable.
All right, next question is a hot topic. Could there be any legal problem in the future if you own Erg that was mixed in the Ergo mixer? We've seen that potentially. I can't say no, but then again, I can't say yes. Personally, I think that type of privacy tooling is pretty critical to maintain a permissionless network and censorship resistance, right? I think that if you look at the core fundamental, let's say, pillars of what makes this industry unique and what gives it a value proposition to begin with, the permissionless aspect of participation and the censorship resistant of open source frameworks, smart contracts, code, and participation is critical. I think that absent, let's say the permissionless element and the censorship resistance, we just, get kind of like a fancy PayPal with dApps on top of it. It's an interesting concept because absent privacy, those two core value propositions, in my opinion, are at risk, right? Because, you even have some legislators that are saying, okay, well, proof of work miners should be able to scrape the data of, incoming transactions and potentially censor them if they're not in the jurisdiction that we approve of. And imagine how fun that would be if you take a global network and you try to apply everybody's political and geopolitical drama in each particular jurisdiction to, a blockchain. It wouldn't work, right? I think that having permissionless and censorship resistance is protecting the core of what makes blockchain unique and gives it value. And absent that, you just move back into the old system, bottom line. So I think privacy is a human right. That's something we should always work to protect. Some people won't like that because the whole value proposition of Bitcoin, if you really go back to when it started, was this idea that there are assumptions that if kept, let's say, within a certain range, this network cannot be controlled, right? And that's fundamentally dangerous and disruptive. But that's a part of why blockchain technology in and of itself is disruptive to current powers and systems because, within certain assumptions, the network is free, it's open, it's fair, censorship resistant, and anybody anywhere can participate. I think we need to protect that at all costs. Otherwise, we just basically destroyed the entire value proposition of our industry.
Yeah, well, I agree, of course, with what you're saying. Also, I just kind of want to give my old guy perspective on these things, right? So, back in my days, we didn't have the internet. We had Usenet. And so with that kind of perspective, actually, I was on Usenet, before the internet went mainstream. We called them BBSs, guys. We used a dial-up modem, 2400 baud. Yeah. Anyway, let me tell you about the beginnings of the internet, right? So 93-ish, when you didn't have to go to like some university to actually be on the internet, on the www. So at that point, the internet was mostly $2 an hour. So to connect to the internet was $2 an hour from a private dial-up modem. There were a bunch of regulations that they were trying to put through, mostly to do with porn, because most of it was porn at that point, and a couple of university things. And really, if you look at the journey of the internet, and if you start that early, you kind of can align it with the journey that we're at right now, right? So they try to control it, right? They try to charge for it, like out the wazoo. They try to control it. They try to say what you can or cannot put it on the internet. And in some ways, it succeeded. I mean, there's some things that you shouldn't have, like obvious, things that we all can agree on that we're not going to mention right now, like, whatever. But for the most part, right, the internet is pretty free, right? So you have access to quite a bit of information. You have a pretty powerful source at your fingertips. And that didn't just happen overnight. That went through layers and layers of bullshit, and people trying to control it, and people trying to legislate, people trying to say, limit this, limit that. You can only have this kind of connection. It went through all of this, right? Went through the .com boom, went through the .com crash. Bottom line is that, are they going to try to legislate this thing? Yes, they will. Ultimately, if the fundamentals are strong, they will have to basically, it's a ship that they're not going to be able to stand in front of and stop. So might as well, they're going to have to kind of like at least ride their little boat alongside of it. And that's the way I see it. It's not clear, as Joe said, right? It's not clear in the immediate future if it is or isn't a legal risk. I also think it's not a legal risk. And I also think that there's going to be jurisdictions that are going to try to legislate it in their own way. But ultimately, I mean, okay, for example, is the internet allowed pretty much in every country in the world? Yeah. I mean, is it censored in some? Yeah. Is it heavily censored in some? Yeah. But for the most part, the internet is the internet throughout the world. The same thing with blockchain, the same thing with P2P cash. Ultimately, it's so disruptive that there's no way they can get away from it. There's no way. They're going to have to play ball. They're going to figure out their ways of how to cling on to that control that they want to cling on, and not let this thing basically destroy them. And you can look at legislators right now. I mean, you got, say, the U.S. SEC saying that, cryptos are securities, right? You got these guys that are just basically, crypto is security. Of course, it's security. Yeah, it's security. And then you got the Singapore SEC saying, no, it's not a security at all. It's a currency. And then you have the Japanese JFSA saying in 2015, 2016, oh yeah, it's a currency. And then in 2018, they kind of like, oh, wait a second. 2019, oh, wait a second. We have to tax it. So what do we do? Well, we'll just attach this ridiculously stupid tax code to it. They don't know. It's going to take time. It's going to take time for these people to figure out what the hell how they can get their own piece of the pie. Ultimately, I have faith in the fact that it will fix itself. Ultimately, P2P cash, or what the Ergo mixer is doing, is not going to be a liability. It's not going to be a legal liability. I don't see it being. I don't see it be. If it is a legal liability, I don't see that being sustainable, because what it is too disruptive.
What's your take, Ilya?
Yeah, I agree with Dan, actually. And as a DEX, we also think how to work with all those regulations in different jurisdictions. But the best we can do, I think, is to try to resist everything that contradicts our values, and try to be compliant with those regulations which we can be compliant with, and staying truly decentralized.
Yeah. It's something that's just evolving, and depending on what roadblocks come up, some people will try to comply. Some people won't ask for permission. That's the same it is with every law in existence today.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a road, right? We're still traveling down this road. There's still uncertainty, and we'll be around for a while. It's just the fact. But you can't let that stop you. You can't let that stop you with just what Ilya said right now. Just keep to your fundamentals, right? So keep to your ethics and fundamentals. You are not wrong. You are right. Okay, it's just sometimes you have to understand that you are right. It'll just take the mainstream some time to catch up with this. Doesn't mean that you're gonna have to comply, or you're gonna have to lay down in their bullshit. It just means that stay strong, keep doing what you're doing, and understand that it will catch up. Understand, because there is no other way for it. They will not be able to kill it. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I know there's some people who are saying that, all they can do is this and this and this. They can outlaw mining. They can, they can outlaw white bread, and then, they can outlaw spoons, and people won't get fat anymore. It's just not possible. It's too disruptive.
Yeah. All right. Next question. As Ergo transaction volumes grow, Do you think we will see more bottlenecks and maybe higher fees also? I would say potentially. I think at some point, every layer one blockchain that sees adoption is going to see some kind of saturation where block space becomes a scarce resource. Now, one thing that I would say we are a little bit ahead of the game relative to like user adoption and dApp development is we already have people that are playing with scaling solutions, right? ErgoPad is working with Plasma. Ilya and Spectrum are creating their side chain. Even GetBlock, a mining pool, is starting to plug in those scaling solutions. Now, will that offset, some of the pressure and give us extra runway before we hit some saturation point? Yeah, it will. And I think that if applications are designed well and we get layer 2 solutions, it'll be a lot less chaotic than what happened with Ethereum, because they basically, hit a saturation point and ran into that problem before they had solutions to plug into it, right? And so it was one of those things where there's a million people on a small bus, and then you get kind of the bidding war for gas fees and block space. And, we saw a bunch of crazy fees in this last cycle. Luckily, being that we are younger and the technology is more mature, I don't think we'll run into the same situation. But I do think that as things become more congested, we probably will see some higher fees. But it's relative. You have to look at what they are now, and it's nothing. What's your take, Ilya, Dan?
Well, so I'm directly in the line of, well, I don't want to say fire here, but just in the line of action because of what we're doing with the Palmyra Comdex, which is reliant on a business model built around current NFT minting fees and current transactional fees in Ergo. However, we're also keeping in mind that, of course, it's not always going to cost 1 cent to mint an NFT on Ergo, right? It might go up. Now, why am I and why is my team confident that our business solution is still sustainable? Because of what you just said, Joe, what Joe just said, and that we're already getting ready for that right now, right? We're already getting ready to be able to scale as it goes up. So, if Palmyra brings a million transactions to Ergo, several million transactions to Ergo, we're gonna have to mint, like 10 million NFTs or something like that. Probably some people are gonna start like, maybe we should charge a little more for those things. But that's okay, because we have a progressive business model, and that's number one. Number two, we understand the ecosystem of Ergo, and we know that people are not going to want to kill their own business, right? They're not going to want to kill their own ecosystem by making these things outrageous, making these things unsustainable. The fees, the minting fees, the transaction fees. So bottom line here is that because of the way the ecosystem is being built up and bootstrapped right now for that kind of growth, gives me and my team confidence that we can build a sustainable business model around that.
What's your take, Ilya?
Yep, I agree with your points, actually. The good thing is that we can see the situation in other platforms, other blockchains, and many projects already preparing their solution to the day when there will be many transactions in the Ergo network, and the throughput will be lower for applications.
All right, let's see. That's a good question that we should get in front of always. Last week, we were told that the Ledger devs were due an update on Ledger's progress early this week. has that happened? Well, I actually woke up today right before this because it's morning my time, and I did see some messages in the channel that I use to communicate with the Ledger team. Now, I do know that the developer from Ledger is the person with control at the moment. I know he was on vacation and is settled in back to work. So after this call, that's actually one of the first things I'm going to do is see where things are at, see how I can help, and hopefully we can get that pulled. You know, it's painful sometimes when you have external partners that are the bottleneck because there's not too much you can do like to directly influence, and then you become like the messenger that's talking to them and then passing it forward.
Exchange listing, exchange listings.
It's painful. It's painful being the messenger sometimes because you're not actually the person with your hands on the control, and you don't have that much power to actually influence the outcome. You're just the guy that's like talking to one resource and then spitting it out there. And sometimes, you end up pulling the pin on the grenade earlier than probably was wise, and you get the joy of the blowback. But sometimes that's just how things work in software development, where things are, let's say in progress, and then there's a bug somewhere, and then you have to take a couple steps back and rework things. I'm sure, Ilya, you have some experience with that in your building, and it is what it is. We're going to march forward. I'll talk with them. I'll give the community an update. But again, I'm the messenger. Yeah, you can shoot me if you want. That's fine.
We never do that. We can't even find you, Joe. You're somewhere in Colorado. You're in the mountains of Colorado.
Forest.
You're like you should change your name to Ergo Rambo because you're just as easy to find as Rambo is in the mountains.
All right. So we have another good question here. Where was it? It was from Toasty Brand. The question is, hi guys, are FPGAs a concern for the network? Right now that is not a concern in my opinion. I do know that we have a community member, Wolf, who I believe works for AMD, and he plays around with FPGAs. I think actually right now he's playing around with the second type of architecture on AMD GPUs. I think he got a little bored with it. PGAs for a bit. It's a good developer. He can Autolicos run on some very specific field programmable gate arrays. Yeah, he's built a build. I don't know how stable it is. There's no block stream that's been released. Now, the other thing we have to look at is kind of twofold. The first is that, FPGAs are very hard to find right now. Like if you wanted to order one, I know at one point last year, when that was a community concern, I looked on Zilnick's website and there was like a 50-week back order. And the other, thing that we have to take in mind is that Autolicos goes through memory table adjustments, which is, somewhat painful in terms of like reworking, loading the pre-hash mining. So I think that will always be a game of cat and mouse, but hopefully we have the right prerequisites to where it's painful to be the cat. Now, long term, it's hard to say how consumer technology is going to evolve, right? And that's something that, I think everybody here can look at what was a GPU capable of a decade ago, right? And compared to today, especially looking at like what NVIDIA is, proposing with their 4000 series, I think like that probably has more wattage per card on the higher end than most people's first mining rig did back in the day. So technology does evolve, and that's something that we always need to look at, watch, and kind of adapt to, because consumer grade technology is on its own growth cycle. And I do know that, this year, AMD bought Zilnick's for $52 billion, something like that. So I imagine, they have their own long-term game plan that we just don't know yet. So we need to just watch and adapt to what comes, try to keep old hardware so that it's useful on the network. And that's not necessarily something we control, what comes in the future, but it's right now not a concern, in my opinion. It's minor. And I'll post, I know that the East testnet went well, which is good. I really don't want them to blow up because more drama for the space, right? I think we've had enough. At least I have. I don't know about you guys. There are some FPGAs out there that might be redirected somewhere, but then it's a matter of where the block streams are. And we don't have any. So it's not a concern. One shows up, then it's worth a conversation. All right. All right, this is for Ilya. Will Spectrum host other tokens than those from the Ergo and Cardano ecosystem?
Yes, Ergo. Spectrum is supposed to support other platforms other than Ergo and Cardano. First of all, we developed Spectrum to support Ergo and Cardano in the first place with special connectors for those networks. And later, we will work on EVM compatible chains, on connectors for EVM chains. So in the future, tokens from other chains will also be supported.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers the AMA for this week. I think we've gone about the amount of time that we allocated for this. I appreciate everybody tuning in.
Yeah, sorry guys. I was a little late. Even though I took the bullet train, it was not bullety enough, I guess. Coming from Tokyo. And boy, are my feet tired. No, it doesn't work this way. No, it only works for planes. Never mind. All right. Well, guys, next week, let's do it again, like we always do. Always got to have Ilya here. Ilya, we should make this more of a regular thing.
Yeah, I'm glad to join you guys. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and congratulations on the release of Spectrum.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a good week.
Yep, bye.
Thanks a lot, everybody.